He built an empire so vast it cast a shadow over everything, including me. But the night he told me he'd rather kiss a dog than look at me, I decided, if I was invisible in his kingdom, then I'd be the one to burn it to the ground. Asterisk. Hey everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an incredible story like this one. The tension in the air that evening was thick, like a storm ready to break. I had spent weeks preparing for that night, perfecting every detail, making sure everything would be flawless. It was meant to be a celebration, a mark of everything. We'd worked for our years of building something, of sacrificing and climbing to the top. I thought we were on the same page. I was wrong. It had all started earlier that day, when Thomas had been distant. He was always working, always planning, always striving for more. The constant drive had become part of his charm when we first met, and I admired him for it. But lately, it felt like there was nothing left of the man I married. He was consumed by his empire, and I was a mere footnote in his carefully curated life. Still, I had hoped that tonight, I would be more than just the wife at his side. I wanted to be seen, to feel important to him again. I had picked out a dress I knew he'd love, deep red, fitted perfectly. The kind of dress that made me feel like the most important woman in the world. My hair was done just the way he liked it, soft waves cascading down my back. I spent an hour perfecting my makeup, ensuring I looked stunning, ready for our night together. But when Thomas walked in, it was like I was invisible. His eyes barely met mine as he glanced over the room, distracted by his phone. He didn't even seem to notice my effort, the way I had dressed up just for him. I stood there, the hurt swelling inside me, but I pushed it down. After all, we had an event to go to, his big gala, the one where he was going to be celebrated for his success. He had promised me we'd enjoy the night, but as I looked at his distracted face, I knew he wasn't interested in me. He was already somewhere else. We got into the car in silence. The driver didn't dare speak, and neither did I. The city lights blurred by my window were a reminder of how small I felt next to his grandeur. How little he seemed to notice my presence anymore. When we arrived at the gala, I tried to hold it together. I pasted a smile on my face, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd wake up and realize I was still here. But no, he was too absorbed in the praise of his peers, in the accolades being thrown at him from every direction. I tried to get his attention, but he was too busy shaking hands, making deals, and laughing with people I barely knew. I felt like a ghost, floating around the edges of his life, unnoticed and unimportant. By the time we finally left the gala, I was done. All the hurt, the frustration, the longing, it all came rushing to the surface. As we stepped into the car, I finally spoke. "Why don't you care anymore, Thomas?" My voice was quieter than I intended, but it still cut through the air like a blade. He didn't look at me immediately. Instead, he scrolled through his phone, checking his messages. I waited, holding my breath, hoping for some kind of acknowledgement, a sign that he cared. But when he finally spoke, his words felt like a punch to my gut. "I'm busy, okay? I don't have time for this tonight. I have work to do." That was it. That was all he said. My heart sank, and the tears that had been building up all evening finally spilled over. "You don't even see me anymore, do you?" He looked up from his phone, his expression cold. "You're being dramatic. We've been through this before. You knew what this life would be like when you married me." Those words, the ones that haunted me every time I questioned my place in his world. You knew what this life would be like. It wasn't love. It was a transaction. And I had been foolish enough to think I could change that. But it was the next thing he said that broke me completely. "Honestly, I'd rather kiss a dog than deal with you tonight. You're being ridiculous. His words hit harder than anything he had ever said to me. They weren't just cruel, they were dismissive, as if I was nothing more than an inconvenience, an obstacle to his success. I had spent years trying to keep our relationship alive, to keep the spark burning, but tonight, it was clear. I was just another part of his empire, a piece of furniture in his world. The car ride home was excruciating. I didn't speak to him. I couldn't. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything, but there was no making sense of it. He didn't love me, not the way I had loved him. I wasn't his partner, his equal. I was a trophy, a symbol of his success. He needed me to look good on his arm, to play the role of the perfect wife. But beyond that, I was invisible. When we got home, I stormed into our bedroom, unable to hold back the tears. I had spent so many nights convincing myself that things would get better, that I was just overreacting. But deep down, I had always known. I had known that this wasn't the man I had married. Thomas followed me into the room, his face unreadable. He didn't apologize. Instead, he looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. "Are you done?" he asked, his tone sharp. "You've made your point. Can we move on now?" I couldn't take it anymore. I was done trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect partner, for someone who didn't even see me. I stood up, wiped the tears from my face, and turned to him, my voice shaking but determined. "You know what, Thomas? I've had enough. You think you can treat me like this? You think you can dismiss me, ignore me, and still have everything you want? You're wrong." I had never seen him so taken aback. His arrogance faltered for a moment, and that was all it took for me to make up my mind. "I don't care about your empire anymore," I said, my voice cold. "I don't care about the money, the luxury, the fame. None of it matters to me. You've built this world, but you've done it at the expense of everything we had, everything we could have had. You've made me feel worthless, Thomas, and I'm done." He looked at me as if I had just slapped him. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "What are you saying? Are you really going to walk away from everything we've built? Everything I've worked for?" "I'm not walking away from anything," I replied, my voice gaining strength. "I'm taking back what's mine. My dignity, my self-respect, my happiness. I had spent years compromising, bending myself to fit into his world. But not anymore. I realized in that moment that I didn't need his empire to feel valuable. I didn't need his approval to know my worth. The next few days were a whirlwind. I filed for divorce. I didn't ask for much, just what I was entitled to. The lawyers did their work, and I made sure Thomas understood that I wasn't leaving empty-handed. In fact, I was taking it all. He was furious, of course. He tried to guilt-trip me, to make me feel small again. But it didn't work. Not this time. He accused me of destroying everything, of throwing away a life that most people would kill for. But I didn't care about his empire. I cared about my own freedom, my own sense of self-doubt as the divorce proceedings continued. I watched as everything he had built began to crumble. The businesses he had so carefully curated, the luxury lifestyle he had flaunted, they all started to unravel. His connections turned their backs on him. His money started to slip through his fingers, and his empire began to fall apart piece by piece. It was a slow, painful process for him, but it was a necessary one. For too long, he had been allowed to exist in his world without facing the consequences of his actions. By the time the final papers were signed, Thomas had lost everything. His companies, his reputation, his wealth, it was all gone. And I was free. I rebuilt my life. Slowly, at first. I took time to heal, to rediscover who I was outside of his shadow. I focused on my own passions, my own ambitions, and I built something that was mine. Not a luxury empire, but something that felt more real, more meaningful. I found happiness in the little things, in the moments that didn't come with a price tag. As for Thomas, he never really understood. But that was okay. He had destroyed his own world, and in the end, it wasn't me who was left empty-handed.